Let's begin with the first animation. The first thing you need is something to animate. The things you animate are known as sources, and you can find them under the Sources tab. There are different kinds of sources ranging from NDI servers to capture devices, but for now we're going to focus on what are known as generators. Go to your generators and drag a shaper into a clip. By default, you'll now see a white circle with a blue outline. Let's start by customizing this. Open the Shape 1 options, and under the type, select color and outline colors of your choice. Now let's get a ring moving. Now click on your shaper's scale option, and now we can assign this to BPM sync. So as you can see now, our ring is already, this will synchronize the movement of your animation with Resolume's global BPM setting, which you can see over here at 120 BPM. While you can also select timeline for this, I can favor setting animation to BPM, mainly because it's the easiest way to synchronize multiple animation settings across many clips, enabling you to create intricate choreographies between the animations with ease, while also allowing you to time your animations to the music by syncing the BPM in Resolume to whatever music is playing. If we now go back to our scale animated setting and click on it, we'll see that we've got two options under the start settings. One is clip trigger and the other one is BPM phase lock. BPM phase lock is the default mode for this, and I'll demonstrate how they differ by showing you clip trigger first. If we go to clip trigger, now every time we trigger the clip, the animation will start from the beginning of its scale timeline, so clicking on it will always restart the animation. If, on the other hand, we set this to BPM phase lock, the timeline will always be running in the background, and this will be in sync with your 4-step counter to the left of the BPM clock set. If we turn on the metronome, you can see on your scale timeline how the 4 beats correspond with the clicks of the metronome. So basically, whenever you trigger the animation, it will start playing from wherever that is at that point in time. So clicking it repeatedly does not actually change or restart the animation. Generally, I tend to use clip trigger for a number of reasons. The main one is that you know exactly what's going to happen when you trigger the clip, as the animation will start from the beginning. And also, it's a lot easier to synchronize different animations within the same clip or in between clips if they're all on clip trigger, because you know that once you trigger them, if you're triggering a whole column of clips, for example, that they will all start at the same time, making it a lot easier to actually plan intricate choreographies between different clips. The animation we've now got operates in a very linear fashion, with the ring increasing in size uniformly throughout the duration of its timeline of 4 beats. So we're going to edit this to make it a bit more interesting. The first thing we're going to do is turn it from 4 to 16 beats long. And then what we're going to do is edit the envelope of the scale parameter. To do this, just click on scale, go to envelope, and then we get this little graph showing us the relationship between the position of the animation and the scale. So what we're going to do here, we add some points first. It's got 1 point at the beginning and 1 at the end. So if we double click at the end of the 8th beat, that gives us this extra point, which we can adjust more precisely on the phase parameter. So that should be at 50%. So that's exactly at the end of the 8th beat. And what we're going to do then is bring this all the way up. So we've got a ramp going up to our 8th beat. And then on the curve parameter, I'm going to click on it, and you see you've got all these different options which actually display what they look like before you apply them. So this gives you different kinds of acceleration and deceleration. So we're going to go for quadratic in this case, and then we're just going to bring this down here, add another dot or keyframe, and then bring it all the way down there. So as you can see, envelopes are very handy and very useful at tweaking your animation. So you don't just have it straight from big to small or small to big, but you can actually have variations of that with different rates and easing in and easing out. So you get more natural movement that mimics more the physics of the real world, like acceleration and deceleration. Once you've got a nice envelope that you think you might want to reuse use again, if you click on this little P, which stands for preset, you'll see that there's some really useful ones already there by default. But as you create other envelopes like the one we've just had, it's very handy to just save them here so that you can recall them at a later stage. And you'll end up with a nice little library of your own envelopes, which can be useful for all kinds of things. Then you can easily recall it and reuse. So let's do that right now just by clicking on save. And then you just give it whatever name you want, up and down. Let's call this one in this case, and click save. So now you've got it there in your menu with a graphic presentation. At this point, it's probably good to show a couple of very useful things that you can do. The first one will be to actually update this thumbnail we've got for the clip so that it more accurately represents the animation we've got. To do that, you do Control or Command Shift and T. So that at the point that at which you press the T, it will pick whatever is in the clip at that point in time and use it as a thumbnail. So if you're ready for it, as it comes up, we hold the keys and there you go. Our thumbnail's been updated so that we can actually recognize what that clip is. Another good thing to do at this stage is to do a little demonstration of the advantages of having the sync to the clip trigger. So if we duplicate or triplicate the clip on 3 different layers by doing Control clicking and dragging or Command clicking and dragging. So now we've got the same clip on 3 layers. And if we trigger them at different times, so you can see what we get is a stage animation where we see the 3 of them. Now, if the animation setting was set to BPM phase lock, they would all be exactly the same. So they will just be sitting on top of each other and you would only see one animation. So that's one of the many advantages of using on-clip trigger. So again, we can actually completely change the way this animation is working simply by clicking randomly on the clips. So we get all these different interactions happening between them. If we were to trigger them all together by just launching the whole column, you can see that they'll all be completely in sync and we'll only see one clip. Again, if we re-trigger any of them at any point, we can play around with the phase of the animations. I'm now going to delete the clips that we don't need, and we're going to try and make this starting point of an animation a bit more interesting. So the first thing we're going to do is add some tonality to the flat color that we've got. So to do that, we're going to go to our effects palette and we're going to look for radar. We're just going to drop it on our clip. And what will happen is that you'll see this now. So we're going to go to our radar settings and we are going to hide the grid. So on click show, and then we're going to animate the angle to the BPM. Again, go to the start settings, click trigger. As we can see now, we've got a bit of tone going on our ring. We can adjust the trail length and the fade to our liking to get different effects. What we're going to try and achieve here is to have a complete break in the circle itself. So we're going to adjust the fade to 0 or 0.01. So there's actually a gap in the ring itself. And we start getting a bit of depth in it. So we've gone from a flat ring to a kind of spirally shape with some depth fading into the distance. Something I strongly suggest you bear in mind when you go through all the effects is that you don't take their name as what the effect actually is. As easy as it is to think of radar as, oh, it creates radar screens, it's very good to actually look at the effect, go through its parameters, and look at it from a granular perspective of what this effect is actually doing rather than what its name describes. As much as radar can be used to create a radar screen, what it actually does is it creates a fade that can be moved around a particular source. What we've achieved with radar is a circular motion and some depth to what was originally just a plain ring. So do bear this in mind when you go through the effects. Never take them at face value because that's going to limit your creative possibilities. Now that we've got our basic animation going, we're going to create complexity from simplicity, which is one of the bases of doing any generative work. For this, Resolume comes with quite a few very useful effects. In this case, we're going to go for the radial cloner. So if we go to our effects tab type in radial cloner. We're gonna drop it on our clip, and straight away our animation is a lot more interesting. So let's scroll down to the radial cloner settings, and we're gonna change the number of clones to 6. Then we're gonna bring our opacity down to 60%, start radius of 0.18, and start scale of 35%. And then we're going to animate a fun offset to PM and 16 beats. So we can use the multiply for that. So we just click it twice, becomes 16 beats. And we're going to add an envelope to this. So open the menu, click on envelope, and we're going to use one of the presets that comes as default with the Resolume, which is the jaws. So now we can see we're starting to get a far more interesting animation than we had. So one of the things we notice in this situation now is how we're getting some straight edges as our circle grows. That is because the cloner is actually cloning the whole area of the screen, not just the circles. So it's cloning just within the boundaries of our 16:9 frames. Could be used a feature because it just creates some more geometric lines and shapes. Sometimes it could be something that you want to avoid. If that is the case, what you need to do is go to your shaper. Actually, it's easier if you start off by switching off the radial cloner. So hit the B for bypass, and we're back where we were. What we do now is in the scale of our shaper, we bring the size down so that it never goes beyond the edges of our screen. So a bit less and even less. So that should do it. Now we can go back to our radial cloner, switch it on, and now our animation is made of complete circles. Again, you can play around with the parameters of the radial cloner to get the different kinds of animation, different effects. You can increase the number of clones, change the radius, and start scales. Playing around is the best way to come up with really interesting animations. So this is the animation as it stands, and we'll carry on building upon this on our next video.